Hey guys, I'm Captain Mike. This is Whiskey and Literature. I do both whiskey and book reviews, and today it is Whiskey Books Review. We're also going to be talking about the Jack Daniel's Single Barrel Proof Rye. After we talk about the books, I will add chapter tools below. Feel free to skip ahead to the whiskey if that's your preference, or just stick around as we talk about these books about whiskeys. So these are the two books that I picked up, just interested in a little more education, if you will, about whiskey. I think the YouTube format is great, especially about specific current whiskeys that are coming out and reviews and things like that. But the whole process of whiskey, I think there is a place for these kinds of books. It's like reading a Whiskey Advocate, long form. I think they're pretty good. So we've got Whiskey Master Class, The Ultimate Guide to Understanding Scotch, Bourbon, Rye, and More by Lou Bryson. Also have the Complete Whiskey Course, a comprehensive tasting school in 10 classes by Robin Robinson. I did pick both of these up on Amazon. This one was $29.84, I think, and $18.89. This 296 pages, 256 pages. Both of the authors have long resumes in whiskey stuff, doing whiskey classes and editing whiskey magazines and things like that. So they come from a nice background that's legit, and you know they're getting really good information to you. And after reading both of these books, here's my just overarching take on them both as a whole. They are the same, but different. Kind of like going to Jack Daniel's and doing the distillery tour and then doing one at Jim Beam. It's kind of the same, but different. They talk about what is whiskey? How is it made? What is whiskey's history? The process, grain selection, mashing, fermenting, distillation, aging, bottling, distribution, the water that's used to make whiskey, the yeast. How does different stills affect the process and the finished product? How about the wood that's used to both age and finish whiskeys? The rickhouses, the warehouses, how do their locations change the whiskey, or even which floor the barrels come from in the rickhouses? The world's major regions, Canada, United States, Japan, Ireland, Scotland, and the rest of the world. They define things like single malt, single barrel, barrel proof, uncut, and unfiltered. We also discuss the people, from the master distiller all the way down to the consumer, you and I, and everyone in between. All of these things and more are discussed in both books, and of course they are. If you're going to write a book about the history of whiskey, you're going to include this information in your book for sure. It's just makes sense. Now, as there is some differences between the books, some of them are pretty obvious. There's the size. The Complete Whiskey Course, this is a great looking book. It would look great on your bar, on your bookshelf, on your coffee table. It is a nicely presented work. It's larger. It has more pages. The pages are bigger. It has better pictures, more colorful, more detailed. There's also, like when they're talking about the different regions throughout the world, like the United States or Ireland or somewhere, what they give examples of these styles of whiskeys that are kind of representative of those styles. But the Complete Whiskey Course, it does have more examples, if you will, just because it can, because of space. It also has a nice example of a whiskey wheel in the Complete Whiskey Course. And I wish it was removable, like it had been like in a sleeve in the back of the book or something like that, and you could take it out. Because I do think that everyone who wants to appreciate whiskey more and be able to express to others and even to categorize in your own thoughts about the whiskeys that you're drinking, then you want to have a whiskey wheel, and that helps you understand, if you will, what you are drinking. I just bought myself one recently, and I think they're pretty great. So this has a nice example. I'm not sure I'd be willing to cut that page out. I would probably just buy one off the internet. But if you want a good example, that is in here. So really the advantage to the Whiskey Master class is its size and price. It's more than $10 cheaper, and if you're going to travel, this is the book that you want to take. I took this one to work, which is where I read it, because this is just too big to lug around. If you're going to fly to Ireland or Scotland or to Kentucky to go do some bourbon stuff, or you're just going to go on a cruise and you're going to have some downtime, then this would be a great companion to take with you. Lugging this thing around in your carry-on luggage, no way, no thank you. This one, certainly, it is very, very luggable around. This one is where it wins for that. And to be honest with you, you couldn't go wrong with either one of these books. They explain the basics and in some detail and go through beyond the basics in some respects as well. There is, however, no need to buy both of them. They do explain pretty much the same thing. If you want a little more detail, pick up the bigger book. If you just want a nice course through the basics, the Whiskey Masterclass is where it's at. It gets the same information for cheaper. Again, I think that YouTube is a great place for current whiskeys that are out and recommendations. If you find someone who's who you think their taste and or whose presentation that you like, then I think that's great. But for the information for all these things, and I've been surprised at some of the guys that I've talked to who've been drinking whiskey decades and decades and decades longer than I have, and they don't have the basic understanding of some of the processes behind making the whiskey. Like the guy I was talking to just a couple weeks ago, we were drinking some Booker's, and I was talking about how it's uncut, unfiltered, and he never really thought about the fact that Jim Beam White Label is essentially the same stuff that's in Booker's. It's the same whiskey. It's just cut down to 80 proof with water. He had just never put those two and two together, and it's just amazing sometimes the gaps in people's knowledge, just honestly because they haven't thought about it. And that's what these books are good for, just kind of putting it all together for you. So really for me, these are a recommendation to buy. There are plenty of other ones on the internet as well. What do you want it to do for you? Do you want something basic information? Then get one that's highly rated on Amazon and give it a go. I'm happy to have these on my shelf. All right, guys, to the whiskey. You might be asking, as Mrs. Captain did, Mike, why did you buy another Jack Daniel's Single Barrel Proof Rye? You already have two on the shelf. I thought I had three, but if I have three, I've either lost one or someone drank it when I was away. I can only find two. But I stopped on the way back from the hotel, coming back to my house, and I'm super happy to be here. So thanks, guys, for sticking with me. Spent 2 months in the hotel in Orlando doing some training for work, and that all went very well. And now I'm just going to be back home for a while, a few months at least, and I'm happy about that. But on the way home, I stopped at a couple liquor stores looking for the Russell Reserve 15, which is a whole different story about that. Couldn't find one. But I ran across this Jack Daniel's Single Barrel Proof Rye, and I just had to pick it up. I don't know if you have rules or stuff that you're looking for when you're out looking for whiskey. Like I have a small list of things that I'm looking for, like specific whiskeys, and then I also have different whiskeys that have parameters that I'm looking for. What I mean by that is Jack Daniel's Single Barrel Proof Rye, and even their Tennessee whiskey. When I see it on the shelf, I go and I look and I say, what is the proof on the bottle? Is it a higher proof than the ones that I have already? And when I came across this 136.9 proof bomb, I knew I just had to pick it up. The two bottles that I have at my house now are 128 and 135 proof. The Jack Daniel's Single Barrel Proof Rye, it comes in typically between 125 and 140 proof. This is certainly the highest one that I've ever seen on the shelf. And I'd love to know if you have one that's higher proof than that. I do know they're out there, and if I saw another one next week that's higher proof, I would pick that one up as well. I'm holding now at my three bottles. You know, I have a nice range between 125, I think, 128 and 136. So I'm not going to be picking up any more until, again, I see one that's higher or this one is empty. I mean, the same rule applies to me for the Single Barrel Proof Tennessee whiskey as well. I do think most whiskeys, if they're 135 proof or greater, I'm just going to pick those up. The only whiskey bottle that I have higher than this one in my collection is a bourbon from Grand Traverse Distillery in Traverse City, Michigan. That's 137.8 proof. So 136.9. I've had a couple pours of this and it is a monster. So let's get to it. It is 70% rye, 18% corn, and 12% malted barley. That's Jack Daniel's typical mash bill for their ryes. Again, 136.9 proof, non-aged stated. MSRP is, I don't know, somewhere between about $65 and $79. That's where I've seen it here in the Bay. Anyway, I paid $66.99 for this at Total Wine. And I'm honestly pretty happy with that. That is the lowest price that I paid for one of these bottles. And I'm really happy that it's widely available now. When it first came out last year, I was really searching everywhere for it, couldn't find one. Finally ran across one. A couple months later, ran across a second one, picked those two up. I've had a couple pours at friends' houses. And but now you can pretty much go into any of the bigger stores and they have these available, and I think that's great. Jack Daniel's, they promised that it was going to be a shelf-stable product, and I think they're hanging tight with that. So that is fantastic. Because I do think this was one of the best whiskeys that came out in 2023. All right, my guys. I think this color-wise, it just looks like a nice, rich whiskey. Again, I had some Booker's last week and the week before, and this reminds me of that. It's that same uncut, unfiltered looking whiskey. It's dark and it's rich. You can tell it hasn't been watered down. It just looks inviting. Very, very deep amber, even mahogany, if you will. Just very rich looking. And I'm using this glass because I don't know why. I just it was the first one that I grabbed. Nice legs coming down. Again, I've had some of this and I'm looking forward to it. It is, unlike the Booker's, it is very powerful on the nose. You can't just stick your schnoz in there because there is alcohol coming off. You have to be very careful with this one. You just go nose blind so quick. But it is a nice amount of cinnamon is the first thing that I get. Then some vanilla, there's some sweetness. It's not a typical rye like I usually drink, like say the High West, High Rye Ryes, Redwood Empire, some of the smoke, obviously the Smoke Wagon, some of the Whistle Pigs, same those High Rye Ryes. There are some of those, obviously, rye notes in there. It's nice and minty, if you will, as well. But it has a sweet component to it as well. It's more like a brown sugar, just deep and rich. It's an inviting nose, and it just really welcomes you and says, "Come and get me." So here we are, and I'm gonna have a couple sips of this neat, and then I'm gonna pour some water in it. I mean, if it's good enough for Ralphie, if Ralphie can do it, or if Ralphie suggests that we do that, then I think why not? And if you don't know who Ralphie is, just type that into YouTube and check him out. He's like the OG of YouTube whiskey reviews. He's great. Mostly does Scotch and those kind of things, but he does some whiskeys, some American whiskeys as well. So, but he adds water to quite a few things, and I think definitely recommends that. All right, let's go in. It's gonna be a super, super small sip here because I know what's coming. Wow, that was a little too big of a sip, actually. It's just heat coming off of that. It's spice, it's peppery, it's rice spice. It's just coming at you. It's already just warming. It's just coming on down here. Man, I don't know if you see my eyes watering. It's not even noon yet. I actually filmed this video last night, and I went to process it today, and I don't know what's going on, but my audio was completely jacked up. You know, I have a wireless microphone to the receiver, and the receiver was dead, so I just plugged it in, and I have never done that before, and I don't know if being plugged in, it just messed. You don't care. It's my second time filming this video. Anyway, this is It is. I was just talking so much to let myself calm down. Can you see the tears? Can you see the tears? And also, right now, Hurricane Debbie, our tropical storm Debbie, is outside my house. It's been raining for about 6 hours now. And I do hope everybody in the north of Florida later tonight is going to be okay. I think we're going to be okay here in the Tampa Bay. You know, I've got my house prepped for this storm, and I think I have enough. I think I have enough whiskey to last if there's a power outage or if we're out of power for a while. I think I'm good. I got generators, guns, and whiskey. Anyway, I do hope everybody is safe with this storm. But okay, it's leaving me with some sweetness. That initial hit is just super powerful, peppery, spicy, rye spice. But then it's leaving me with some sweetness. Let's go back in again. I'm a big fan of raisins. To me, raisins are a sweet, sweet treat. And I keep getting reminded of raisins when I'm drinking it. I get a raisiny type note. On the back end, there's also another fruit. It's kind of another sweetness. It's a rich, dark cherry note. So it's peppery, it's spicy, rye spices. It has a raisin note to it, a dark cherry note to it. It is sweet and spicy. It's a nice balance between the two. It is still just warming every sip that I have. Man, I am crying. Wow. Yeah, 12 o'clock. This is it's fairly early for 136 proof whiskey. You know what, we're gonna add a little water to this and see what that does to it. But it's also, I'm gonna say it's slightly bitter. I think tannic is the right word for that. It's just has just a bit of a tannic texture, and these high proof whiskeys, to me, I think the alcohol just kind of evaporates, and that leaves kind of a drying effect in my mouth. Astringent, I believe, is also the word for that. You can tell it's just a little bit lighter now than it was with that little bit of water. I added some water to my Bookers as well, and I actually don't do that very often, but these high proof whiskeys, it just kind of cuts that heat a little bit and allows the flavors to shine through. Cheers again. That definitely allows, it just cuts the heat slightly and allows the flavor profile to come forefront a bit. That little cherry note, the raisiny, and that spice and the pepper is tamped just a bit, but it's still there. It's a great mouthfeel, both with and without water. It's just nice and viscous, not really chewy, but it's just really nice. It's leaving me with that warmth and some spiciness coming down. I'm a big fan. I think Jack Daniel's hit it out of the park with a single barrel proof rye. Your thoughts on it? Have you had this? Do you have multiple? Have you had this higher proof? And I don't always think the highest proof is the best. The Elijah Craig single barrel or the Elijah Craig barrel proof. I actually like the A124, even though that proof is quite a bit less than, say, the C923. But I still think that flavor, that profile just comes through. So I'm not always like, you got to have the highest proof, though I'll buy it because I think it's great. Guys, that's all I have for you today. Any thoughts, any suggestions, feel free to always drop them in the comment section below. Someone commented about 6 months ago that my music was too loud and it was hard to watch the video. So, you know, I've simplified my life. I just cut the video or the music out of the videos. And actually it just makes these videos a little easier for me, and just add it kind of at the end. So any other comments or suggestions, feel free to drop them below. If you enjoyed the video, like it, it's free. Subscribe to see more of my content. Again, I do both whiskey and book reviews. But for now, my friends, you know what to do. I hope you're reading something good and drinking something great. Turn the pages and stay thirsty. Cheers.